This video is part 2 in my Omnipod series where I interview inventor and creator of the Omnipods, Paddy. If you haven't already checked out my full review, be sure to do that first with the video in the link in the description down below. So Paddy, what was the inspiration behind making these pods?
Well, basically, my wife and 3 kids decided to come back to the UK in 2012, and we decided to live in Devon, and basically we looked for a place which would be suitable for a wheelchair, and it was just about impossible without doing major adaptations, which we did. And in the end, I had to do something to sort of bring some money in, and I thought of my wife actually suggested we ought to do something to provide more accessible accommodation, and basically I found out that it wasn't just a local issue in Devon. It was very definitely a nationwide one. So I thought this was the best way of getting accessible living spaces out to as many people as possible in the UK.
Yeah, to be honest, it's been amazing. We've been here one night so far, and it's very comfortable. It feels very spacious, which is unusual for a pod. And obviously the location is amazing here as well, which adds to it. I just wanted to know, with obviously you have this idea in your head, and then now there's a pod. How does it get from idea in your head to become a reality?
Well, as always, it's a long story, but we actually started off by buying a piece of land rather naively in Slapton, which was next to an AONB, and we thought, oh wow, this is beautiful. We'll buy and we'll build an accessible retreat. And it was, in fact, I met with the planners and they said, well, you've got a snowball's chance in you know where to get it. But we plodded through the whole process, and we were successful in getting it. It was through all that research that I found out that it was something that is needed, and there's a great demand for accessible accommodation, both in holiday and residential applications. So I've always been interested in modular building, and I felt that if we could make them in the factory and be able to deliver them on the back of a lorry, basically they can go more or less anywhere, and so that's where it came from.
Yeah, it's excellent. I love the you say the modularity. Is that word?
Yeah.
Modularity of it, where it can be sort of adjusted into some specific needs and that, which is a great aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are some places that aren't accessible, so we have done some what we call assemble on site, which tend to be a bit more custom. We recently did one in Cornwall for a gentleman who unfortunately had Parkinson's, and it was becoming more and more dangerous for him to live in his own home because he was falling and it wasn't adapted for him. And we got a lawful development certificate from the Cornish planners, and we built a pod in his garden, and he's very happily ensconced now on a beautiful deck, a covered deck on the porch, overlooking the river, which it's job done, and he's very happy and very safe.
Excellent. I bet it can make a huge difference to people's lives, especially at the moment with less and less people wanting to go into care homes. Having that other option there as well is really important for some people. Yes,
definitely. Because of COVID, we've had actually lots, and the bad press that care homes were getting. We've had a lot of people call and interested in trying to get their loved ones in a self-contained situation, i.e. a pod in the garden where they can stay as independent as possible for as long as possible, but be close enough for them to keep an eye on them and have carers come into them. So yeah, this whole COVID thing is making people think very differently.
Yeah, it's crazy how that situation has created some opportunities in other situations. It's
definitely
crazy how it all works.
Yeah. Well, it's good in a way that we've all had to sort of stop and sort of rethink about what's important in our lives, and I think in many ways it's been fantastic.
Yeah. Take me through some of your, because obviously there's so much design options that go into it, but take me through some of your favourite things about the pod.
Well, as we all know, for accessibility, space is of the essence. You've got to have the space, and obviously with a pod, the perception is a very small space. But so this is a lot bigger than a lot of pods out there. Space for turning circles and so on. And I think just accessibility in the kitchen, it's a very simple kitchen, but you can get under the sink so that you can't get out of washing up. And then of course the bathroom is the almost a pièce de résistance, where I feel that, it can make or break a holiday or a person's experience in a living space if you can't get in and out of a toilet or get into a shower. And so that is something that I sort of insisted on in all our designs. So, yeah.
Was there anything when you were going through the design process and like conceptualizing the idea that was particularly like difficult to like include in the design that was trying to be accessible?
Not really. I mean, it was a challenge for some of the people who we started with manufacturing. But the basic things like level entry and wide doors. I mean, it's basic common sense as you and I know, but it's something that not everybody has thought of because they haven't had to deal with it. So difficulty, not really. I think, as with anything, I believed in it, and I sort of a bit stubborn, and I push forward on these things and make them happen. So
excellent. And the since you started as well, you've managed to put them in lots of different locations. Where would you say would be like your favourite location of one of the pods would be?
Well, my favourite would be in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere. But I think one of the most stunning sites we've been on, put our pods on, is in the Lake District. Two of which are right on the shores of Lake Windermere. And that's pretty special. I think waking up and just having the Lake Windermere right at your doorstep or porch step. So yeah.
Excellent. And I'm intrigued to know about the roof design as well, because obviously it's you can make it a square box and you have more functionality. Why did you go for the roof design in the end like this?
Well, basically, I looked at the whole issue for the holiday industry, and it was a matter of really finding an entry level, and pods were the entry level, in my opinion, of getting into the living space. And glamping was becoming quite a popular thing, and so the shape, the Gothic arch in particular, which I'm very fond of. I think it lends itself to that vernacular, but I mean, I don't want to be defined by just this shape. I mean, it works very well, and we're getting a lot of acknowledgement now, and a lot of people like the shape. And as you said yourself when I came in, the space, the feeling of space is quite something.
Yeah.
And that's made from the height, but. It was just one of those things. I suppose we were going after a pod, and the traditional perception of a pod was an arch roof. So it's not the easiest thing to work with, mind you, but it is. A lot of people love it.
Yeah. Well, that's at the end of the day. Like, you've not just got to live in somewhere; you've got to love it as well.
Yes.
And this does definitely add a lot of character, and it's very cool.
Thank you.
So obviously you've started with going into, you started with it on places like caravan sites and all that, locations. But going forwards, what sort of, because me and Alice were saying when we came in, it's like we could easily live in here. All we'd need is just a bigger fridge freezer and an oven, and we could easily live in here. What about going forwards? Is that something you're looking to?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there really is no limit to where the application of an accessible living space could be beneficial. And as I said, a lot of people are asking now if they could put a pod in their garden, either to have as an extra room for family or whatever. But down the road, we are in the process of we've designed some 2, 3 and 4 bedroom lodges, which we hope will come onto the market and have greater appeal in a wider sort of number of uses, really.
Yeah, and from my personal perspective, seeing it, it's obviously with house prices rising and rising, wheelchairs users need specific needs, and that might not be suitable in a regular housing situation. So to have another option out there where it's possible to have something that's accessible,
yes,
on the lower end of the cost compared to, you know, when you start talking about house, especially if you have a bungalow in a nice area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that one day, I mean, Leonard Cheshire Charity did a very comprehensive study on accessibility in the various local planning authorities, and they exposed a real need. But basically, for all the houses that are built, they're advocating that 10% of them should be fully accessible, and then I think 15 or 20% to the living standard. So that means at least that other 15 to 20% can be adapted later on if necessary. The problem with a lot of buildings, as you probably know, especially older buildings, is that then they weren't built with the forethought to be accessible, and therefore it's prohibitively expensive to make them so. But we make all ours, whether you take the full accessible package or not, we make them easy to retrofit them, and structurally you can just put any fixture you like, including ceiling hoists.
Excellent. Yeah, I did know with the here, it's like all that, if somebody needed a ceiling hoist, there's room there to do it as well.
Well, there is. Unfortunately, that's not structurally sound, but so don't get any ideas. But yes, the arches themselves, and in fact, we've moved on from the structure of this particular one. We're on to a much stronger structure, so that we can accommodate ceiling hoists. But we don't do those. We just put the infrastructure in for a ceiling hoist company to come in and with their advice we put up the necessary supports and noggins. Yeah.
So let's say that tomorrow I call you up and say, Paddy, I want a pod in my garden. What would be the process there?
Well, we'd first have to make sure that we could access your garden, and there are many ways of doing that. Obviously, the easiest way is if we can put these on a chassis and wheels, and so we wheel them off back of a lorry, and we can manoeuvre them into place. That's the most ideal. But for instance, the pod at the Lake District in Low Ray in Windermere, the lanes were so narrow that we couldn't take a 4-metre wide pod, so we had to build it in 2 halves, and then we craned each half in and bolted it up when we got there. And that's one option. And then the third option is probably if it's absolutely impossible, we have to build it on site, and we've got a very good team that does that. It takes a little longer and it is a little bit more expensive, but generally speaking, it's done in about five weeks.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, as I said to you earlier, we could totally live in one, me and I.
Well, please do, and yes, I would consider giving you a discount.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and if you ever got a pod with a view like this, I mean, it's a dream.
It's pretty special, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, thank you very much, Paddy.
Not at all.
It's been a pleasure staying here, and it's been a pleasure meeting you as well.
Lovely meeting you, and I'm really thrilled that you've come to stay and come again.
Oh, I would love to.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.